To know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK.
Here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
It's 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan tonight on GB News. In my big opinion, ex-footballer Joey Barton has said there's no place for female commentators in the men's game. I'll be sharing my first on-air views on a row which has engulfed the beautiful game. As the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves is mocked for saying she struggles to get by on 86 grand a year, do the Labour Party still represent the working class? In the big story following teen sensation Luke Littler's darts success, should more 16-year-olds skip school and college and get straight into the world of work? I'll be asking Coronation Street legend, the brilliant actor and fearless political commentator Charlie Lawson. And in my take at 10, it's game over for the Playboy Prince. It's time for King Charles to give Andrew his marching orders. I'll be dealing with Prince Andrew in no uncertain terms at 10, and you won't want to miss it. Send me to the Tower for all I care. 2 hours of big opinion, big debate, and big Saturday night entertainment. I'll see you after the news with Sam Francis.
Mark, thank you. Good evening. I'm Sam Francis in the GB Newsroom. The headlines at 9. Flood-hit households affected by Storm Henk are being offered thousands of pounds in government support. People in eligible areas can apply for up to £500 to help with immediate costs. And there's also an offer of up to £5,000 in grants for some homes and businesses. Around 200 flood warnings remain in place across England, with exceptionally high and, in some cases, record river levels. Great Western Railway is urging passengers to check for cancellations as several lines are closed due to the floods. Newly released court documents in the US suggest that Prince Andrew had daily massages during weeks that he spent at Jeffrey Epstein's home in Florida. Testimony from Epstein's housekeeper says that both the prince and his then-wife Sarah, the Duchess of York, were friends with the convicted paedophile and Ghislaine Maxwell. The unsealed files were part of a civil lawsuit against Maxwell, who's serving a 20-year prison sentence for recruiting underage girls for Epstein. Prince Andrew strongly denies any wrongdoing. Here in the UK, it's being reported that Rishi Sunak's new pensions minister is being investigated for breaching expenses rules. According to The Times, Paul Maynard used more than £100,000 of taxpayers' money to promote the Conservative Party and his own re-election. The amount appears to have been spent on printing, stationery and rent. The allegations came to light after a local Conservative activist raised concerns. The MP for Blackpool North has denied any wrongdoing. The Chancellor says that he's not sure if the government can afford to offer voters any more tax cuts before the next election. A 2% reduction in national insurance has come into force today, which Jeremy Hunt claims will benefit 27 million people and save the average family with two earners nearly £1,000 this year. However, the government has frozen the income tax threshold, pushing many into higher brackets. That's offset the benefit of that national insurance cut. The Chancellor admits that further cuts are unlikely.
It was right to support families through COVID and through the cost of living crisis. And yes, taxes had to go up in that period, but we are a Conservative government that wants to bring down taxes because we recognise that families are finding life really tough. It's the start of a process. As Chancellor, if I can afford to go further, I will. I don't yet know if I can, but we want to do this because it helps families and it also helps to grow the economy.
The British Library is facing a multi-million-pound bill to recover from a cyber attack. According to reports, it could be forced to spend £6 to £7 million, that's around 40% of its reserves, to rebuild its digital services. Criminals knocked out the National Library's website in October and accessed passports and other employee data. The technology outage is still affecting the library's online systems and services, but its physical sites are open. Well, we've been hearing today that Russia has used North Korean ballistic missiles in Ukraine for the first time. That's according to an independent weapons expert. The United States has described it as a significant and concerning escalation in cooperation between the two countries. Dutch researcher Joost Ollemans, who was among those to examine the debris, says Russia is violating international law.
Russia should be adhering to the sanctions on North Korea. Even more so when it's in the case of a highly significant type of weapon system like this short-range ballistic missile systems that we're now seeing. So that's really a very gross violation. It's just that there's no physical mechanism in place to prevent Russia from importing clandestinely, even very obviously clandestinely importing weapon systems if they choose to do so.
And America's aviation agency has grounded more than 170 Boeing 737 MAX 9 aircraft. That's after a window and part of the fuselage blew out of a plane in mid-air. The Alaska Airlines aircraft was forced to an emergency landing shortly after taking off from the US state of Oregon. Social media footage here shows the large hole in the plane where the emergency exit had previously been. 177 people were on board, but luckily no one was hurt. An investigation has been launched, but we understand that the impact on UK-operated aircraft is not there. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, digital radio and on your smart speaker. Now, though, it's time to go back to Mark.
Nice to have Sam Francis with us tonight. He returns in an hour's time. Welcome to a very busy Saturday night edition of Mark Dolan Tonight on GB News. In my big opinion, ex-footballer Joey Barton has said there's no place for female commentators in the men's game. I'll be sharing my first on-air views on a row which has engulfed the beautiful game. In the big story following teen sensation Luke Littler's darts success, should more 16-year-olds skip school and college and get straight into the world of work? I'll be asking Coronation Street legend, the brilliant actor Charlie Lawson. My Mark Meets guest is a world-renowned mind reader who can guess at your innermost thoughts. He shares his incredible skills live in the studio shortly. You will be amazed. In My Take at 10, it's game over for the Playboy Prince. It's time for King Charles to give Andrew his marching orders. I'll be dealing with Prince Andrew in no uncertain terms at 10, and you won't want to miss it. As the mother-in-law moves into their Californian mansion, will Harry and Meghan last at 2024? And is a Trump presidency now inevitable? I'll be heading live to the United States and asking one of America's top political commentators, Dr. Carol Lieberman. We've also got tomorrow's front pages at 10:30, with three top pundits who haven't been told what to say, who don't follow the script and hopefully have had a drink in moderation. Diana Moran, Benedict Spence and Precious Muir. I'll be asking the pundits as the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves is mocked for saying that she struggles to get by on 86 grand a year. Does the Labour Party still represent ordinary Brits? Plus, the most important part of the show, your emails. They come straight to my laptop, mark@gbnews.com. This show has a strict golden rule. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. A big 2 hours to come. It is your perfect Saturday night in. So fire up the kettle, tear open the custard creams, and if you must, take something cold and fizzy out of the fridge. And we start with My Big Opinion. Good evening. Let me put it on record that ex-footballer and occasional manager Joey Barton is a prize numpty. With a criminal and violent past, he's a role model only for unthinking thugs. And I certainly won't defend his recent controversial decision to describe former female professional footballers serving as pundits on the men's game as serial killers. He's entitled to his view and to free speech, but likening two female stars to Fred and Rose West is abusive language which merits a yellow card at the very least. But amid all of the fury and the pearl clutching around what he had to say, there lies a kernel of truth. Former male pro footballers should be the ones serving as top pundits on the men's professional game. Barton's clumsy and offensive language is unhelpful in a debate that needs to be had. Personally, I'm more interested in the comments of a true football legend, Kevin Keegan. The ex-soccer star and former top manager Keegan, who pretty much won everything you can in the game, certainly has a pair of balls. In October of last year, he upset the woke mob by complaining about women commentating on men's football. The 72-year-old said that he had a problem with an England female footballer providing expert analysis on a match involving Gareth Southgate's men's side. In comments made at a football event and reported by The Times, he said, "Look, I'm not keen, I've got to be honest, and it may not be a view shared, but I don't like to listen to ladies talking about the England men's team at the match, because," he said, "I don't think it's the same experience." He went on to say, "I have a problem with that." Well, this icon of the men's game has been dubbed a dinosaur for those remarks. Dinosaur, isn't that a bit ageist? Anyway, Yvonne Harrison, the CEO of Women in Football, claimed that Keegan's comments were symptomatic of widespread misogyny faced by women within the game. Now, it may well be that this is a big problem in football, and it's appalling. It's got to be dealt with. But this is a deeply unfair interpretation of Keegan's words. Far be it from me to defend the guy. His language about ladies and all the rest of it was a touch clumsy. But it's quite clear that what he's saying is that those offering commentary and punditry on, for example, Premier League men's football ought to be people who have played at that level, and which would be, checks notes, former male Premier League footballers. It cuts both ways. I don't think retired male tennis players should be commentating on top-level women's tennis. John McEnroe, for all of his trophies, should not be a pundit on matches featuring Emma Raducanu or the Williams sisters. It should be Martina Navratilova or Chris Evert. This media storm ignores the fact that former pros in any given sport are the ones qualified to discuss the game. Just as the highly talented Eni Aluko, who represented her country more than 100 times, should definitely be the main pundit when the England women's national side plays, not Alan Shearer or Ian Wright. And female broadcasters in men's football have made a massive contribution. I'd like to see more of it. Laura Woods, Gabby Logan or Alex Scott on Football Focus. She replaced Dan Walker, who'd never kicked a ball in his life. But I don't think that men should encroach on the women's game, and similarly, I don't think women should encroach on the men's game either as pundits. Now, ITV have entered the storm, putting out a statement on Twitter condemning Barton's remarks and insisting that football is, quotes, for all. Although, given the fact that they disabled comments from their post on Twitter, it seems that football is for all except those who don't agree with them. The reality is that Kevin Keegan and even that prize numpty Joey Barton are getting slated for what many people are thinking, which is, of course, the norm now in the clown world of 2024. If you're foolish enough to point out woke, politically correct box ticking in sport, all you'll have to show for it is a red card and an early bath. Sadly, the truth these days will get you sent off. Even VAR won't save you. What's your reaction? Mark at gbnews.com. I'll get to your emails shortly, but first, my top pundits this evening. The Green Goddess herself, journalist, model and fitness expert Diana Moran, top political commentator Benedict Spence, and television personality and broadcaster Precious Muir. Precious, your reaction to what Joey Barton had to say?
I personally think that women could do anything, so I disagree completely. I think that as long as they're capable of talking about the sport and actually have knowledge of the sport, I don't see why them being female has anything to do with it. As long as they've got, I would say, a good following, they are presentable, they're able to talk about the sport and get the point across during the game, I don't see why they should be in any way, shape or form taken a position away just because they're female.
Diana Moran, you're nodding your head.
I think this is a case of misogyny. I think it's totally, totally wrong. A woman, it's a question of woke again these days, isn't it? We women can do just as much as you blokes can do. And if you've got perhaps the tennis players, for example, why have you got to have McEnroe commentating? Why can't we have Annabel Croft all the time doing things like that? Or what about Claire Balding in racehorse stuff as well? I think this is absolutely stupid. I really, really do. Would anybody remember the wonderful Rachel Hayhoe Flint? She was the cricket captain all those years ago. She should have been commentating on cricket matches. What's the matter with it? It's wrong. We women can do things just as well as you men.
Well, probably better in most cases, but Benedict Spence, my point here is that if you're watching the FA Cup final, you want the pundits to have played in the FA Cup final. If you're watching the Premier League, you want to watch pundits who have played in the Premier League, and that's where I agree with Barton.
I disagree that they even need to be professional footballers. I think that Joey Barton is right that actually none of the female pundits currently on the circuit are any good, but he's wrong as to why that is. He seems to think it's fundamentally because of, them being female. The issue actually is because they are former professional footballers. And I would take the example of saying, can you name me, how many top male pundits could you name me who are sort of truly phenomenal at what they do? I could name perhaps Jamie Carragher, Ian Wright, Gary Neville when he's not talking about Manchester United, Thierry Henry, and now that Graham Souness has retired, that's probably it who you would actually tune in to listen to. And the key thing here is actually the men's game is significantly larger from the women's game. There is a much larger pool of people, therefore, to draw on. And I think actually it's rather unfair that we exclusively look towards former footballers in order to be pundits.
Let me interrupt you. I think you're sidestepping the issue with a politician's answer there. It's a red herring to debate whether they're good or not as pundits. It's their qualification to pass judgment on Premier League players. If I'm watching Spurs versus Arsenal, I want to see ex-Arsenal players. I want to see ex-Spurs players. They've been there, Benedict. They've got the T-shirts.
Again, this sort of strikes me a bit like the Vietnam veteran argument. You don't know, man, you weren't there. It doesn't actually help if the person in question is inarticulate, cannot actually form a coherent sentence, isn't very insightful. Actually, anybody can sit there and go, oh, it's a game of two halves, it's very tough. You don't get any sort of insight from that. And I think that, again, we need to come back to what I was saying before, which is that actually punditry is a very different set of skills from playing professional football. Most professional footballers go through their entire lives. Yeah. They don't need to articulate sentences or anything like that. They need to be able to do it internally. And actually, most professional footballers are dissuaded from talking about the game. They're told to talk in sound bites so that they don't say anything particularly controversial, unlike Joey Barton.
Well, there you go. Well, look, I've got top pundits, let me tell you, and they don't agree with me, which is what the show's all about, because Mark Dolan tonight is the home of diverse opinion. What is yours? Mark at gbnews.com. Coming up next in the big story, following teen sensation Luke Littler's darts success, should more 16-year-olds skip school and college and get straight into the world of work? I'll be asking Coronation Street legend Charlie Lawson. Plus, in an exclusive Mark Dolan Tonight People's Poll, we've been asking, is Joey Barton right that female pundits should not be covering men's football? The results are in. I shall reveal all next.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel. Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show. Joey Barton has caused controversy by saying that female ex-pros should not be pundits in regards to men's professional football. Well, let's have a look at your response on email, mark at gbnews.com. And this is Richard, who says, Mark, a bloke who prefers a bloke having an opinion on a bloke's game. Have I missed something here? Where is the controversy? Terry says, surely the most offensive and totally irrelevant thing here is any supposed relevance to the disgusting crimes of the Wests. Did anyone even mention this? Well, Terry, I agree. Mentioning serial killers was completely unacceptable. Pat says, Mark, I agree with Joey Barton with regards to having female commentators for men's games. I do not agree with his choice of words, but I watched Friday night's game with the sound off because Lucy Ward never shuts up, says Pat. How about David, who says, hi, Mark. When I watch Match of the Day, if a female is commentating, I turn off the sound. What a pity. Well, listen, that might sound quite sexist, but this from Margaret, who says, Mark, I'm a woman and I can't stand women commentators on any football matches. And last but not least, this from Ian. Hi, Mark. Good evening. Barton is spot on, clumsy but spot on. How many ex-championship, non-premiership male footballers are pundits on Premier League matches? Answer, none. Ian, nicely put. Keep those emails coming. mark@gbnews.com. Well, we conducted an exclusive Mark Dolan Tonight People's Poll. We've been asking, is Joey Barton right that female pundits should not be covering men's football? And 74% say yes, he is right. More than 25% say no. It's time now for the big story, and teen sensation Luke Littler is tipped to earn millions of pounds in sponsorship after his barnstorming performance at the World Darts Championship, in which he reached the final earlier this week. It was a great performance. But does his success prove that 16-year-olds have more to offer than we give them credit for? Does it show that 16-year-olds should have the vote, potentially leave school before doing their A-levels, or even enter the military? Let's get the views of fearless social commentator and the legendary actor and former Corrie star, Charlie Lawson. Charlie, great to have you on the show. Happy New Year, big man. This young man's success is a wake-up call, isn't it, for any 16-year-olds sitting at home playing computer games?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to, well, I hate to bloody bring Arsehole's name up, but I mean, Tony Blair went education, education, education. And, you know, what we've kind of lost with that is apprenticeships, etc., etc. We're now beginning to wise up and say to ourselves, you know, not everybody needs to go to university. And I hasten to add, why in the name of Jesus do we have to have police officers who've got degrees? But the point being is, if you're 16 and you have a talent and you have a good family and you have perhaps a good agent or whatever, if you have a talent like this young man has, then you have to follow it, and you have to follow it when you've got to seize the day, because, you know, don't leave it till he's 18, because he probably wouldn't, you know, have got 3 A-levels or whatever, and he probably wouldn't have wanted to. The boy has done wonders. He's come on. He's been beaten in the final. He seems like a thoroughly decent young fella. I don't give a monkeys whether he likes doner kebabs. He's got a career in darts, and he should pursue that. Now, I'm not suggesting we suddenly change education, that you can leave school, blah, blah. But I do think, Mark, we should bring back the way things were, that sort of 16, if you've got an apprenticeship to go to, you've done your O-levels or whatever, then go. Because quite frankly, we need tradespeople. You know, if you live in your own home, as I do, for God's sake, it's hard enough to find a handyman, never mind a plumber, a plasterer, or anything else. So we need these skills. They're highly paid, skilled jobs. So listen, I digress slightly, but I wish him all the very best. And I know in my big sport, which is my thing, which is horse racing, I know the young people who join the horse racing industry as grooms, you're not allowed to say, well, I still say it, stable lads and stable lasses, and I will continue to say it because that's what they are. But, you know, they have a great career. They work extremely hard, all the hours God send, and they love it. They're dedicated people. If you ever go to the races and get a chance to meet a young apprentice or a young stable girl or a young stable boy, they are great, great people. So I would encourage anybody and their parents that if you feel that it's right, that you can go out into the world and start making a living and contributing and all the rest of it, then seize that nettle, because if you don't, it'll pass you by.
Indeed so. Obviously, you know, you're off Tony Blair's Christmas card list. Describing him as an arsehole is harsh language, but hey, you're entitled to your view, Charlie. Listen, for this lad to reach the final of the World Darts Championships is truly incredible, isn't it? Do you think we wrap our youngsters in cotton wool these days and do too much for them?
Mark, you know my answer to that. And apropos something that your lovely producer had spoken to me about before, about recruitment for the Royal Navy, etc., and indeed the whole of the British Armed Forces. As we know, over the last 10 years, we have raised a risk-averse bunch of young people. And before anybody wags their finger at me, I lived with, God rest her soul, my Leslie, who's dead now, who had black depression and huge mental health issues. But now it seems to me that children and young people are being encouraged to have mental health problems. Not encouraged, but we're raising a different sort of young person than we used to do, and I fear I fear that that's half the problem about what we're going to talk to before about recruitment to the armed forces. I'm not denying, and don't let anybody ever say I am, about mental health issues, but don't be encouraging people at the age of 14 to discuss the fact that they think they've got mental health problems. We never did it in my day or your day. I think we're raising a different bunch of young human beings, and that's obviously highly controversial. And I don't mean to be, that's just my opinion. Kids aren't as tough as they used to be, with notable exceptions. But I despair sometimes when I talk to very young people, and I've got 2 grandchildren, so don't let anyone phone up and say I'm talking crap, because I'm not. So I think your point is well made, Mark. I think we are raising a very, very different generation of young people, and I fear for the worst. And I'm not surprised that the Royal Navy are short of recruits, and the British Army are short of recruits, and the Royal Air Force are short of recruits, because they can't find the right people. And as your great friend Norman Brennan says, we need to be recruiting the right people for the right jobs. Now, I've digressed, Mark. I apologise.
Well, no, you raised a very important issue about this recruitment crisis in the military. We now have insufficient numbers of sailors to man several frigates, including 2 warships, HMS Albion and HMS Bulwark, which will be mothballed in a move that critics have said could spell the beginning of the end for the Royal Marines. This is about cold, hard cash, isn't it? We've got to recruit more talent into the military. The world is getting more dangerous, Charlie.
It's an absolute bloody disgrace. And I've been wanting to say this on your show, Mark, for a long time.
Yeah.
The finest career young people could ever have are in our armed forces, which are just about hanging on to the best in the world. Although we couldn't even fill Wembley Stadium with the British Army. Do you know what I mean? It's just ridiculous. We should be investing billions and billions every year, never mind the NHS, which is falling on its arse as we speak. We should be, and that's nothing to do with the staff, I hasten to add, it's to do with woke nonsense. But we should be investing in our young people, not only financially, but we should be recruitment drive. There should be a huge recruitment drive for the British Armed Forces. We still, despite the lowering numbers and despite, organically, you would expect the Conservative government to increase the budget by 10 billion every year, but they don't, because they're scared to. Listen, you know what? HMS Queen Elizabeth, an aircraft carrier, has now got its capacity to take off for action. I think it's 32 fighters. We are now able to put 8 on board. 8 of the damn things, and they're 5th generation fighters. Now, if this head the ball down in Argentina, if this arsehole decides to invade the Falklands, God knows what are we going to... How are we going to get down there and do what we did in 1982?
Well, I think what I would do, Charlie, I think I'd send you to the Falklands to sort him out. Listen, thank you for, once again, a display of common sense and reason. Always a treat to have you on the show. Happy New Year, big man, and we'll catch you soon. The remarkable Coronation Street actor, acting legend and fearless political commentator, Charlie Lawson. Coming up with tonight's top pundits, as the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves is mocked for saying that she struggles to get by on 86 grand a year. Do the Labour Party still represent ordinary Brits? That's next on Mark Dolan tonight on GB News. Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
At the age of 16, Luke Littler got to the final of the World Darts Championships. Does this prove that 16-year-olds should consider getting straight into the world of work, skipping A-levels and college? Well, this from John. Good evening, John. How are you? On email. Mark, I struggled at school. I left school at 15 to help my mum with her bills, but I was dyslexic and never took any GCSE exams. But if I was 14 and was offered a bricklaying course, plumbing, electrician, carpentry, or anything else at 14, I would have taken it. That's what they should be doing. There's teachers out there that know that kids are in the classroom who will never pass their GCSE exams. So why don't they get them doing something constructive, like apprenticeships before they leave school? So by the time they're 18, they're fully qualified to do something. John, brilliant stuff. Now, Joey Barton has caused a stink by suggesting that ex-female pros shouldn't be pundits for male football. That was the topic of my big opinion. Well, let's have a look at your reaction briefly, if we can. It's a packed show. Graham disagrees with Joey Barton and says, time and again, we see male football being misogynist, racist and homophobic. I believe it's time that female football teams broke away from the FA and started their own football association. They don't need the FA, says Graham. They're strong enough on their own and could create a far better football association. And last but not least on this one, Jenny says, hi, Mark, I love men's football and I'm a woman. I can't stand women commentators. I switch it off. It's just tokenism. They state the bleeding misleading, obvious, and the high-pitched tone of their voice sounds awful. That's Jenny, who's given me a little kiss. Mwah! Straight back at you, Jenny. By the way, I'm very, very worried. I've had a very troubling email that's come in. I need to read it to you. It's very important. Where is it? It's about my tie. And there you go. It's from Margaret, who says, Mark, you're always so smart, but that tie does not go with your shirt. Yuck, says Margaret. Do I need to change the tie? Because we've got a break at 10. I can run into the dressing room. Should I change the tie? Mark at gbnews.com. Margaret's not happy. Yuck is the word. Harsh but fair. OK, folks, lots more to come. You're watching Mark Dolan tonight on GB News. The Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has said the cost of living crisis has left her increasingly short financially, despite her £86,000 a year salary. The Labour MP has said she winces at her bank balance each month, with her mortgage, gas, electricity and food bills all adding up. Meanwhile, Sir Howard Davies, the chairman of NatWest Bank, calls to storm by saying it's not that difficult to get on the housing ladder. He has since retracted his comments. But do these kind of remarks prove that the elite in this country are out of touch with ordinary Brits? And do Labour still represent the working class? Let's speak to the founder of the popular consumer finance website moneymagpie.com, good friend of the show, regular pundit Jasmine Birtles. Jasmine, your reaction to these remarks by Rachel Reeves?
Well, yes, it was very interesting to hear Rachel Reeves's remarks, because on the one hand, as you say, it does show a little bit of her being out of touch. You think 86 grand, come on, you're going to be able to cope. But she might have very big mortgage. I mean, if she lives in London, she probably does have a very big mortgage. And maybe she has all sorts of parties that she has to do for people, you know, and that's an extra food bill. So she probably does have higher costs than others. But I get the feeling that she was probably being honest, but also trying to come across as a woman of the people, because as you point out, increasingly, the Labour Party doesn't feel like the party of the people, the party of the workers. And it almost feels, as rather with the Tory party, to be honest, that there are two parties within that one party. As I say, with the Tory party, that feels like you've got the centrists and you've got those that are wanting to break away, that are wanting low taxes, that are wanting low immigration, etc. And same in Labour, you've got the centrists, and then you've got the workers, Jeremy Corbyn's lot, really. And it's very, very difficult, I think, to keep those two together. And I'm wondering whether it's even worth it now.
Well, yeah, I mean, is she, Jasmine, is she being punished for just being honest? 86 grand a year, it's a lot of money. Is she rich? Is she not rich? Is she in the squeezed middle?
Yeah, I think in London, certainly that is the squeezed middle. And you know, I do say this quite regularly about politicians' pay, that it's nowhere near high enough, I consider. I mean, that's a very unpopular thing to say, but I do think that when it comes to politicians, you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. And boy, have we got some monkeys. And I think really, you know, it should be twice what they're getting, because 86 grand, I mean, you could be a sort of middle-ranking marketing person in some, you know, some company in the middle of London who does very little, frankly. And MPs are supposed to be running the country. They're supposed to be representing us. They're really important jobs. So really, I consider they should be much higher paid, but have far fewer expenses, because, you know, as we know, we've had all sorts of expenses issues.
Oh, yeah.
But certainly, yeah, I'm hearing from people who, on my website, Money Magpie, people who are, you know, on similar sort of amounts of money and saying, I'm sick of all the tax. I'm sick of being taxed so much. I'm sick of losing money on this, that and the other. They are feeling poor. People are, you know, as you say, the squeezed middle. Unless you're on millions, I think nearly everybody in the country now is feeling hard done by and feeling squeezed.
Well, yes, poor old Luke Littler, we've been talking about him, got to the final of the darts this week. 200 grand prize money. He'll be lucky if he sees half of that. Let's bring in a quick reaction, if I can, Jasmine, from our top panel tonight. Diana Moran, Benedict Spence and Precious Muir. Precious, Labour MP struggles to get by on £86,000. This will go down like a lead balloon in Labour areas, won't it?
I think so. I think she was actually trying to come across as, like, relatable, but she doesn't seem to understand she's actually getting paid twice as much as the UK, you know, average UK citizen. So she's just saying the things that we obviously can relate to in regards to high mortgages, high rent, utility bills have gone up, things that we can relate to, but her wages, most people in this country cannot. So she doesn't come across very well, in my opinion.
Benedict, is this a political mistake that she's made as she put her foot in it? Is it a gaffe? Will it be damaging?
It's a very minor one. It is a gaffe. I think it's correct to say, though, that increasingly, I think people are going to find that £86,000 isn't as much as they thought it was. It's certainly not as much as it used to be, and that's going to be the same for everybody in every single bracket. That's the effect of inflation and a lack of growth in any country, and I think that that's something that people are beginning to understand. But, yes, it makes her sound slightly less in touch with people who don't live in London, because, of course, this is a very sort of London-centric thing. But is it going to massively hurt the Labour Party? I doubt it would shift the dial even 1 point, even for a week, frankly, simply because of the general malaise that the country feels itself in. You can point out that inflation is very high, you can point out that wages aren't rising in line with it, and most people would say, well, that's not Labour's fault, that's the Tories.
Yes, I mean, is there a danger, briefly, Diana Moran, if you can, is there a danger that we're punishing politicians for being honest and saying the truth about their own situation?
Possibly, yes, but I do feel that in this case, if she can't manage on 86 grand and she's got a husband who's earning a lot of money as well, then I'm a bit worried about her. How can we trust her with the UK economy?
There you go. Jasmine Birtles, do come back and see us again in the studio soon. Jasmine Birtles is the founder of the popular consumer financial website moneymagpie.com. Coming up, my Mark Meets guest is a world-renowned mind reader who can guess your innermost thoughts. He shares his incredible skill live in the studio in just a moment. Plus, we've been asking, as the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves is mocked for saying she gets left financially short on 86 grand a year and winces at her bank account, do the Labour Party still represent ordinary Brits? The results are in. I shall reveal all next. Plus, do I need to change the tie in the next hour? Mark at gbnews.com. Don't go anywhere.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You are watching Mark Dolan Tonight on GB News. Another Mark Dolan Tonight People's Poll results are in, and we've been asking about Rachel Reeves' Shadow Chancellor. Says that she gets left short on 86 grand a year, winces at her bank account. So do the Labour Party still represent ordinary Brits? The results are in, and they're damning for their Shadow Chancellor. 94% say no, they don't represent ordinary Brits. Just over 5% say they do. Before we get to my Mark Meets guest, back to me, Josh, when you can. Margaret's not happy. She's emailed the show. She said, you're normally dressed very smartly. She's not happy about the tie. She said, it doesn't go with the shirt. She said, yuck. So this is where I store all of my important outfits. It's a plastic carrier bag. I look like a man whose wife left him 3 weeks ago, don't I? So listen, what do you think? Get your votes in for what tie I should wear in the next hour. Do we want to go to red tie? Would that be better? Shall we go for blue stripy? Or how about yellow? There you go, yellow. So do you want the yellow, the blue or the red? Please get your votes in for what tie I wear in the next hour. mark@gbnews.com. I'll have a look at that during the news. Plus, don't forget, I'll be dealing with Prince Andrew in my take at 10. But it's time now for this.
Yeah, Cheryl, I'm not sure about this. What was the name you were thinking of, please?
Top man in action, that's right, tonight. World-renowned mind reader Graham P. Jolly, a man who's wowed audiences with his ability to predict anything from your holiday's destination or the name and telephone number that you're thinking of. In another era, such are his supernatural powers, he would have been burned at the stake. But in 2024, he's one of the country's most popular live entertainers. Brilliant to have Graham in the studio. Graham P. Jolly, welcome to Mark Dolan.
Thank you, Mark. Lovely to be here.
When did you first notice that you had this gift of knowing what people are thinking?
Well, I started in show business 50 years ago. In fact, 2 days ago, I celebrated 50 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
A great achievement.
And
that's
I didn't start
longer than Elton John, isn't it?
Yes. I wish I'd known it gone so quickly. I would have got up earlier in the morning, really. But I didn't start off doing this mind reading. I started off as a normal magician. Yeah. And then I found, about 30 years ago, I took up what we call mentalism, which seems to have a bigger appeal. So I was in my 40s when I discovered that I could do this sort of thing.
Could this remarkable power be abused? Could you get hold of someone's bank details?
No. I mean, mentalists, there is a certain limitation to it. I can't do it in any other arena other than to entertain. Because there's a big difference between magic and mentalism. I mean, I think when we see a magic trick, we know, don't we? We know. Like, for instance, this is not something I would do, but if you saw a magician... Can I stand up for this?
Oh, please do, yes.
If you saw a magician...
Wide shot, there we are.
Small... Yeah, is that in?
Yeah,
a small, medium and a large bit of rope. If you saw that, and then they put them up at the top like that, and they make this silly gesture... like that, and they're all the same length, you would assume that you were watching a magic trick.
Correct.
I mean, academics might think you're changing the molecular structure of matter, but most people will think it's a trick. And there we are.
Oh, that's very... I mean, that's still very impressive.
Yeah, it bores me, actually. But that
so
sort of thing...
So you've gone much more into the mental side.
Well, yes, the mental... In fact, I'd like to try something with you, if I may.
Please do.
But this is
I'm very happy for you to try it on with me.
OK. This is sort of a grey area, though. You might see this, Mark, and think, well, that's a trick. But then you might think, no, but maybe he influenced me. What I'd like you to do, Mark, in a few seconds, is to think of a card. Don't name it, just think of a card.
Great.
And I'm going to name your card... I'm going to give your card a name before you even announce it. I name your card Mark.
OK.
I name your card Mark. Now, that's before I know what card you're going to think of. I want you to think of that card. I'm just going to ask you one question.
Yes.
What is it? No, you can tell me. You can tell me.
Shall I reveal the name of the card?
Yes, please.
The 7 of clubs.
There's something like... Now, there's an absolutely free choice.
That's right. We didn't chat before the show.
We didn't, no. The 7 of...
clubs.
Can I walk towards you?
7 of clubs.
Are we in shot?
Now, this is a normal pack of cards.
This is a normal pack of cards. I'll just remove them from the box. And you said the 7 of clubs, is that right?
7 of clubs, correct.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, my goodness.
Mark, but that's not the effect.
All right. You got there pretty quickly.
Yeah. Can you just hold your hand out flat?
Of course I can.
And keep it like that.
Yeah.
Now, I said before you name the card that I would name your card Mark.
Yes, you did.
Because the interesting thing is, well, it's not that interesting, but every card has a name on the back.
Yes.
Alice, Sally, Mary, Ted, David,
Are these
Paul.
all your exes?
Yeah, yes. Joe.
You've
yes.
lived the life.
Yeah, Guy, Sid. Anyway, all different names.
Yes, so every card is named.
But you said the 7 of clubs, and I named it Mark before you named it.
Correct, and I only thought of 7 of clubs just now.
And that says Mark.
That is freakish. That is supernatural.
No, well, yes. Some people would say, I think that's a trick. Other people would say...
I don't think that's a trick.
You don't think it's a trick? Maybe I influence you subliminally towards that. I must admit that a 7 is quite often thought of. But that wouldn't explain that, because
well,
you could
also, I had a few other options before I got to 7 of clubs.
Yes,
I went
you
through
changed your mind 3 times, didn't you?
Ace of spades.
Ace of spades.
It was 3 times.
Yeah, yeah.
Partly because I play cards so rarely, I had to remember what the cards were. But I settled. That is truly amazing. So I've thought 7 of clubs, and then you've handed me a card that says Mark, 7 of clubs. It's truly extraordinary. I can never understand how you did it.
Do you want to try something else?
Go for it.
I just got an album of photographs of well-known people. We've got Michael Jackson, Lady Diana, Donald Trump.
Yes.
I'm going to make a prediction about Donald Trump.
Oh, what's that?
Well, he's not going to make it next year.
All right.
He's going to have to pull out on medical grounds.
Really? It's not like him to pull out, is
well,
it,
I think he's got prostate problems. And, Mark, just flick through it.
We'll both get cancelled now.
Yes, flick through it.
So flick through that.
Just to confirm everything's normal.
Yeah, I've got Barack Obama, Elvis Presley, Alfred Hitchcock.
OK, hold it, close it, would you? And I'd like you to open it once somewhere and just keep it open.
Okay,
keep it open.
I'll do that, and you can't see where I've opened it. OK, it's open.
OK, and concentrate on the name of that person, would you?
All right.
And close it. No, I couldn't know. There's no cameras behind you.
There's no way that
Think
you could
of it. I want you, please, to try and form a emotion, if that's possible, when you think of this person.
Okay.
And I sense scepticism. I don't know. John Travolta.
Yes, it was John Travolta.
You're not being kind.
I was trying to give you a bit of disco vibes.
Yes.
By thinking in a disco way.
You really didn't think of John Travolta. You're not saying that.
I am not humouring you. That's not my job.
You're not being kind.
No, my job is to find you out, but I've so far failed.
Well, you're not being kind to an older man, are you?
No way. Well,
yeah.
There's not much. Much of an age gap between us.
I met John Travolta once.
I took it to. Oh yeah, what happened?
Well, I never forget what he said to me.
Yes.
He looked at me and he said, "Who are you?" And I think that summed up the man to me.
Oh, what an encounter.
I think of...
You should have said I'm Graham P. Jolly.
Graham P. Jolly. Do you know, Uri Geller I thought was fascinating.
Oh, yes.
I don't know if you've got any viewers at home, just go and get a spoon or a key.
Well, that's it.
Here's a spoon.
All right.
And just
a normal spoon?
A normal spoon I got from your canteen. Okay. I'm just going to rub it. And I want you just at home, concentrate, and on the count of 3, say the word bend. Bend.
Look at that.
Matron. Oh, that's boiling hot.
That is truly extraordinary. I should have warned you, it's a family show, Graham.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, but that's all right. I tell you what, it's nice to see somebody get it up at this time of night. Graham, you are a maverick. You're a genius. You've got your website, which is mindreader.co.uk.
Yeah.
Has reading people's minds ever backfired?
Yes, I did. I did a show quite recently, and I gave an envelope to somebody before the show and sign it, put it in your pocket. I was halfway through my I said, would the gentleman with the envelope stand up? And nobody stood up. And my wife said to me, he's just passed away. Which is not funny. Have we got time?
That's a bit awkward.
Have we got time for one more?
Greg says we've got 30 seconds.
30 seconds, OK. Think of your PIN number. No, don't. Just think of a 2-figure number, but over 25. A 2-figure number, but over 25. Okay. And for the audience's verification, just make a note of it nice and clearly in the circle. In the circle. And
any number above 25.
Yes, please. Have you done it?
2 figures.
Have you done it?
Done.
OK. Close it. I don't want to see it. No. Do you have a number in your mind?
Yes, I do.
I'm going to write some numbers down, which won't mean a thing. Keep it there. Don't change your mind. And one of these numbers will be yours. I think. I'm covering myself. Quite a few numbers here. Okay, I'm nearly there. Keep it there. Okay, right. Was there any particular reason why you chose this number? Was it a purely random choice?
To make sure that it was above 25.
Okay. Are you thinking of the number? Is there a 3 in this number?
Yes, there is.
You're thinking of 30?
Yes.
OK, but that's strange. Because look, if you look at the top line going across, 1 and 10 and 7 and 12 is 30. This line here, 8, 11, 2 and 9 is 30. This line here, 10, 5, 12 and 3 is 30. This line here, 11, 4, 9 and 6 is 30. This line, 1, 8, 10, 11 is 30. This line here, 10, 11, 5 and 4 is 30. This line, this one, the four corners, the diagonal, the two diagonals, the middle four. I'd like to see Carol bloody Vorderman do this.
You're a lot more entertaining. Graham,
thank you so much.
He got it. It was 30.
Thank you so
much. The man
much.
is a wizard. Prince Andrew's not a wizard. I'll be dealing with him next in my Take a 10. First, the weather.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather. Looking at the next 24 hours or so, it's going to remain cold, frost and ice tonight, some fog patches again as well, and then fairly dry and bright through Sunday itself, and that's because high pressure is going to dominate. Into next week it starts to draw in colder air from the east, and we'll all notice that. But for this evening and overnight, generally still a west-east split across the country. Clear skies across Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Wales and the southwest. Some frost, fog and ice forming here. Icy stretches elsewhere as well. Temperatures hovering close to freezing, falling well below freezing in the Glens of Scotland, down to around -7 or 8, possibly a little lower in 1 or 2 spots.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Carson, this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Time for King Charles to give Andrew his marching orders. I'll be dealing with Andrew in no uncertain terms at 10. That's my Take at 10. It's all about Prince Andrew, and I'm not pulling my punches. As the mother-in-law moves into their Californian mansion, will Harry and Meghan last 2024? And is a Trump presidency now inevitable?
With your vote for our campaign on Monday, January 15th, you will declare that we are going to take back our country. We're going to defeat Joe Biden.
Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits. So, a packed show, lots to get through. In just 2 minutes' time, I'll be dealing with Prince Andrew. But first, the news with Sam Francis.
Mark, thank you. Good evening. I'm Sam Francis in the GB newsroom. The headlines at 10. Flooding across parts of England has been described as an absolute nightmare. That's as 190 flood warnings remain in place across the country. The government has announced that thousands of pounds will be given to communities that are affected. People in eligible areas can apply for up to £500 to help with immediate costs. And there's also an offer of up to £5,000 in grants for some homes and businesses. It comes as more flooding is expected to hit parts of the Midlands, Lincolnshire and the River Thames, with exceptionally high and, in some cases, record river levels. In the US, newly released court documents suggest Prince Andrew had daily massages at Jeffrey Epstein's home in Florida. Testimony from Epstein's housekeeper says the prince spent weeks at the convicted paedophile's Palm Beach property. Prince Andrew strongly denies any wrongdoing. Meanwhile, it's being reported that he's facing a multi-million-pound bill in the UK for security costs if he wants to remain at his home on the Windsor estate. It's being reported that Rishi Sunak's new pensions minister is being investigated for breaching expenses rules. According to The Times, Paul Maynard used more than £100,000 of taxpayers' money to promote the Conservative Party and his own re-election. The amount appears to have been spent on printing, stationery and rent. The allegations came to light after a local Conservative member raised concerns. The MP for Blackpool North has denied any wrongdoing. The Chancellor says that he's not sure if the government can afford to offer any more tax cuts to voters before the next election. A 2% reduction in national insurance comes into force today, which Jeremy Hunt claims will benefit 27 million people and save the average family with two earners nearly £1,000 this year. However, the government has frozen the income tax threshold, pushing many into higher brackets, offsetting the benefit of that national insurance cut. The chair of the Labour Party, Annalise Dodds, says people are still paying for previous Tory failures.
We've seen, unfortunately, a huge cost of living crisis in our country. And of course, this is just one aspect of it. As you say, 1.6 million homeowners who are going to be facing an average of £2,880 more on their mortgages when they remortgage. Now, of course, some of that damage, unfortunately, is already done. You know, a large amount of it, sadly for many people, is down to what happened with that Liz Truss crashing of the economy. We immediately saw that feeding in.
We've learned today that Russia has used North Korean ballistic missiles in Ukraine for the first time. That's according to an independent weapons expert. The United States has described it as a significant and concerning escalation in cooperation between the two countries. Dutch researcher Joost Ollemans, who was among those to examine the debris, says Russia is violating international law.
Russia should be adhering to the sanctions on North Korea. Even more so when it's in the case of a highly significant type of weapon system like this short-range ballistic missile systems that we're now seeing. So that's really a very gross violation. It's just that there's no physical mechanism in place to prevent Russia from importing clandestinely, even very obviously clandestinely importing weapon systems if they choose to do so.
And in the US, all Boeing 737 MAX 9 aircraft have been grounded after a window and part of the fuselage blew out of a plane in mid-air. The Alaska Airlines aircraft was forced to make an emergency landing after a large hole appeared where the emergency exit had been. 177 people were on board, but luckily no one was hurt. And we understand there's minimal impact on UK aircraft. This is GB News across the UK on TV, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker. Just say play GB News. Now, though, it's back to Mark.
Thanks, Sam. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight on GB News. Huge controversy in the last hour. I received an angry email from Margaret, who, let me tell you, was one of my favourite viewers. She said, "You're always dressed so smartly," but did not like the shirt-tie combination. Well, I've had hundreds of emails with your nominations for your preferred colour of tie, and we've gone for blue, which, let me tell you, does not reflect my political affiliations. If you want to know my political affiliations, I think they're all dreadful. Welcome to the show and a very busy hour to come. As the mother-in-law moves into their Californian mansion, will Harry and Meghan last 2024? And is a Trump presidency now inevitable? I'll be heading to the United States and asking one of America's top political commentators, Dr. Carol Lieberman. Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits this evening: the Green Goddess Diana Moran, top political commentator Benedict Spence, and TV personality and broadcaster Precious Muir. Plus, they'll be nominating their headline heroes and back page zeros of the day. A packed tower, a brand new tie, a smart new jacket, and those papers are coming. But first, my take at 10. Good news for Harry, who can have a week off from being the world's most unpopular prince. Enter stage left his uncle Andrew, formerly known among the UK press as Randy Andy for his colourful private life. Well, it's a label which has come back to haunt him. This week, an enormous cache of court documents has dropped in America, with the late Queen's favourite son being checked 69 times in a 900-page dossier relating to disgraced billionaire paedophile Jeffrey Epstein and the woman who facilitated his sexual crimes, Ghislaine Maxwell. The prince is accused of forcing a young Virginia Giuffre to sleep with him on 3 separate occasions at the age of just 17. Also, he's accused of joining an orgy with numerous other underage girls on Epstein's Caribbean island, enjoying daily massages on the Epstein compound, and allegedly touching another woman's breast. It's important to stress that Andrew denies all of these allegations and settled his case with Virginia Giuffre out of court with no admission of wrongdoing in 2022. Now, Andrew may or may not be guilty of these crimes, but what we do already know is enough for the Playboy prince to be banished from the royal family once and for all. This is a prince who has brought his family and the country into disrepute by having an ill-advised friendship in the first place with a known sex offender. And he made a complete fool of himself with that Newsnight interview in which he claimed to have a disorder in which he doesn't sweat. Well, all of that has changed. He's now sweating more than a vegan in a butcher's shop. And his problems mount as he faces possible eviction from his £30 million 10-bedroom home, the Royal Lodge in Windsor, after King Charles made his brother responsible for the upkeep and, more recently, security of the premises. But this fat cat aristocrat won't go hungry. It turns out the privileged prince has inherited millions from his late mother and father. Nice work if you can get it. King Charles wants to have a slimmed-down monarchy. And the first lump of unwanted fat that he's dealing with is Andrew himself, who hasn't just shamed his own family, he is a national embarrassment. Prince Andrew is a man who was gifted a house by his mother when he got married, but sold it to an Arab businessman for £15 million in 2007. That's when £15 million was a lot of money. And after a lengthy court battle over massive unpaid debts, he finally flogged his Swiss ski chalet for just shy of 20 mil. Ultimately, wherever this story goes, and of course it could get worse, which has huge implications for King Charles, Andrew's behaviour has been below par for a top royal, and he hasn't shown an ounce of contrition for the embarrassment he's caused. When only the permanently broke, toe-sucking royal reject Sarah Ferguson is backing you, you know you're in trouble. Through his own mixture of idiocy and arrogance, Randy Andy has brought this on himself, and in my view, it's game over. It's time to march the grand old Duke of York back down the hill and keep him there. I'm told all he does these days is luxuriate on his royal estate and ride his horses. Well, he's run his last race, and it's time he was consigned to the knacker's yard. The party's over for the Playboy Prince. Do you have an ounce of sympathy for Prince Andrew? Let me know your thoughts, Mark, at gbnews.com. I'll get to your emails shortly, but let's hear from my top pundits. The Green Goddess herself, journalist, model and fitness expert Diana Moran, top political commentator Benedict Spence, and television personality and broadcaster Precious Muir. Your reaction to what I've had to say, Benedict Spence, is there any way back for the Playboy Prince?
I don't think there's been a way back for some time. I think that his standing among the general public hit a bottom some time ago and has sort of stayed there. It's bizarre, actually, that I don't think that the release of these files has actually done his reputation any greater damage. It's only sort of seemed to bring other people down alongside to roughly where Prince Andrew also is. So, no, I don't think that there is a way back. I don't think there's any great desire, even within the royal household, to have him brought back. Certainly, I don't think you're going to find much on this panel, put it that way.
How about you, Precious Muir? Do you have sympathy for Prince Andrew, which some do? After all, he has been prosecuted of no crimes.
Well, I personally have to say this. As a woman with a vagina, I don't have the luxury of getting on a private plane and going to an island and not asking any questions whatsoever. The fact is, you go somewhere, you ask those questions. So for me, it is very, very vital that they figure out why these people on that list attended that island and maybe several times. That is a big question. And no, I do not have any sympathy for Prince Andrew. Maybe he's guilty by association, but at the end of the day, we have to find out the specifics as to why these people on this list were at this island.
What sanctions, Diana Moran, should be meted out on Prince Andrew, if any?
Well, there's certainly going to have to be something meted out. He was a royal prince. He should have behaved like a royal prince. He's made an absolute mockery. Poor King Charles to have a brother who's being up to all of this. As you've said in your report, he lives in a £30 million pound house. He's surrounded by people who are still trying to, you know, be subservient to him. His ex-wife, or is she his ex-wife, still living there. What on earth is going on? When is he going to get into the real world? What also worries me is, by association, all those other people on that list. Some of those names are a bit worrying.
It is worrying.
You're absolutely right. I mean, Precious Muir, Diana Moran mentions Sarah Ferguson, and she said ex-wife, or is she the ex-wife? I don't know. Are they still banging? It's anyone's guess. But it's been suggested in the Express today by the respected royal reporter, former royal reporter at the BBC, Precious Muir, that perhaps Prince Andrew should marry Sarah Ferguson to save his reputation. How about that for a solution?
I think that the reputation is not possible to be salvaged. Like, it is really at the point where there's no return.
How about you, Benedict Spence? There's a really explosive article by Michael Cole in the Express today. He's a good friend of mine. He shoots from the hip. He says that if Prince Andrew married Sarah Ferguson, it would completely detoxify him.
I don't think it would detoxify him. I would hope that he would be marrying Sarah Ferguson because it would make the two of them happy, not because it would potentially rehabilitate his image. But you know, who knows? Stranger things have happened. But I don't think that that marriage, rerunning that particular marriage, would.
Well, I wonder about that, Diana Moran. You know, a big wedding. You know, the country gets involved, the press get on side, redemption. She basically saves the Playboy Prince.
Absolutely
not at all.
I mean, this whole thing stinks. Why did he have a settlement out of court?
12 million.
12 million.
12
there you go.
million.
12 million. Why, if he had done nothing?
Yeah,
Come on.
I think that it's quite concerning. 12 million to somebody you are unsure of meeting is quite a big sum of money.
And Precious Muir, can I thank you for confirming tonight that you are a woman with a vagina?
I am a woman. I don't have the luxury of just going places and not figuring out if it's going to be a dangerous place. I wouldn't go to an island where I can't get off it and I don't know what's going on there. So those questions need to be asked.
It's so hard to know these days. I get very confused.
I had to clarify.
Listen, folks, let me tell you, producer Greg's been in my ear, a developing story. We've got tomorrow's papers, and Prince Andrew features in two big stories in tomorrow's papers. That's at 10:30, with full pundit reaction from the anatomically excellent pundits you've been listening to. But coming up next, as the mother-in-law moves into their Californian mansion, will Harry and Meghan last 2024? And is a Trump presidency now inevitable? We're heading straight to the States and asking one of America's most fearsome political commentators, dropper of truth bombs herself, Dr. Carol Lieberman. She's next. This is Mark Dolan tonight on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I. So you want higher taxes? Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show. Well, it's time now for US News. And Kinsey Schofield is away this week, so let's catch up with one of America's most compelling political commentators and the woman known as America's psychiatrist, Dr. Carol Lieberman. Carol, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you back on the show and Happy New Year. Speaking in his first re-election campaign event of the year, President Joe Biden denounced Donald Trump for sowing lawlessness and disorder in the country. Let's take a listen.
Donald Trump's campaign is obsessed with the past, not the future. He's willing to sacrifice our democracy, put himself in power.
Well, Donald Trump has fought back. Let's take a listen, Carol.
With your vote for our campaign on Monday, January 15th, you will declare that we are going to take back our country. We're going to defeat Joe Biden.
Well, there you go, Dr. Carol. They've started the campaign. Barring a major upset, Donald Trump is on course to be the Republican nominee for US president, at which point polling in the handful of must-win battleground states suggests that he has a better than even chance of beating Joe Biden in November. So is a Trump victory on the cards?
I certainly hope so, but there are a lot of things in between before we get to that point.
Because, first of all, Biden is such a hypocrite. He says things like democracy is on the ballot. Actually, the biggest obstruction to Trump is there are some states that are trying to take his name off the ballot. And they're using January 6th. They're trying to say that January 6th was an insurrection. And according to the 14th Amendment of the American Constitution, people who perpetrate insurrections aren't allowed to run for office. Well, I watched Donald Trump that morning of January 6th. He did not tell people to go and trespass in the Capitol. He didn't tell them to, steal things or make a mess. He just told them to go there and stand there and make a stand, actually, that they want the votes to be counted more correctly. And, there is a very large question. I have a very large question, and lots of people do, in terms of the 2020 election, as far as whether it was honest or not. And so for Biden to be saying things like democracy is on the ballot, and to be saying that, Trump is an insurrectionist and all of that, it's just outrageous. But what's more outrageous? That people have seen Biden since he started running for president, back in 2020, when he was in his basement, and I started saying from that time that he has encroaching dementia, and everyone now can see that it has encroached more, including on this recent stop, his first campaign stop, and yet people clap. The audience was clapping. I mean, granted, those were people in his party, and they wouldn't have been there otherwise, and they might be some paid actors.
Well, here it is, Carol. This is another senior moment for Joe Biden, who appeared to be completely zoned out at the end of his campaign speech last night. He was speaking at Valley Forge in Pennsylvania. He turned to leave the stage, only to have his wife, First Lady Jill Biden, rush up to him, take him by the hand, whisper in his ear, before eventually guiding him off the stage. She's not his wife, is she? She's his handler, and she's his nurse.
Yes. I mean, people now expect it, that when he gets to the end of a speech, he's not going to know where he is. So she was ready to jump up there, and, she probably whispered something like, it's time to leave now, Joe. And then he actually turned back after she was leading him off, and he said some things like he said, I understand power. Well, yeah, he does understand power. He has corrupted it and taken too much of it to make the country a mess.
Carol, let's talk about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Press reports suggest that Meghan Markle's mother, Doria Ragland, has moved in with Harry and Meghan. Apparently, she's taken up residence in the Sussex's guest house on the grounds of their Californian mansion. Putting on your hat as America's most beloved psychiatrist, what does this move tell us about what's happening in the family?
Well, it tells us that Meghan and Harry are worried about paying their mortgage. They're taking her in to contribute, and also, of course, to be a 24/7 babysitter. I don't think it's going to affect their relationship necessarily one way or the other. I think Harry, has fond feelings for her mother. But I think it just shows, it's just another sign that their expectations and what they had thought was going to happen are not happening, and that they're just kind of gradually falling apart.
But also, look, I think we can agree Doria Ragland is a very dignified lady. She's a very beautiful woman. She's a nice lady to all intents and purposes, arguably unlike her daughter. But it's not good news for Harry, is it? Because he's outnumbered now.
Well, that's a good point. That's true. Well, it would be interesting to know what she really thinks, whether she wants them to continue down the road they've been going down, or whether she realizes that, they've embarrassed themselves, and she might be on Harry's side.
If she's got half a brain. Listen, how do you solve a problem like Prince Andrew, Carol? Let's take a look at tomorrow's Mail on Sunday here in the UK. Another devastating headline, and it reads as follows. More humiliation for embattled Prince as newly released legal papers reveal that the court told Ghislaine Maxwell find emails on Andrew and sex toys. That's right. Ghislaine Maxwell was ordered to search her phone, computer and thousands of emails for Prince Andrew's name, along with the words sex toy erotic, royal, underage, sex, nipple and dildo. Now, that sounds like my wedding night, but this is pretty damning stuff, isn't it?
I think, Chris, I know I listened to your talk and it was very elegant. However, I disagree. I think Prince Andrew has been punished enough. And, you know, in the court case against him, in what she filed, Virginia Roberts, she has never produced the photo, the most damning photo. And in a court, you know, it's not supposed to be the court of public opinion. It's supposed to be a real court. And yet she does. All of a sudden, she doesn't have the evidence. I mean, if you had something that was worth millions and millions of dollars, wouldn't you keep it safer, like in a bank vault, or give it to your lawyer or something? She suddenly can't find it. So I think she's been lying for a lot of things, not just in regard to Prince Andrew, but in regard to a lot of things. I think she's out for the money. She's out for her 15 minutes plus of fame, and she's out to hurt other people, you know, particularly Prince Andrew. I think if she did meet him, you know, he's denying that he ever met her. I don't know if that's true, but okay. But if she did meet him, I think she might have been a woman scorned.
Okay, well, of course, Carol, Virginia Roberts is not here to defend herself. She would deny those allegations. And of course, the Prince did settle out of court in regard to those allegations, but you're entitled to your view. And thank you so much for stepping in at the last minute. Kinsey wasn't able to join us, but we love having you on the show, Carol, and we'll catch up in the very near future.
Okay, thank you.
There you go. My thanks to America's psychiatrist, the dropper of truth bombs, I think you'll agree, quite a personality, Dr. Carol Lieberman. Fantastic stuff. Loads more to come. Keep those emails coming in thick and fast. Mark@gbnews.com. But next up, the papers are on the way with some more headlines in regards to Prince Andrew and much, much more. This is Mark Dolan tonight on GB News. See you in 2.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Welcome back to the show. Look, I'm just sorting through the papers. I've got producer Greg in my ear. It's a very busy half hour to come. Let's start with the papers. And we start with the Mail on Sunday, and more humiliation for embattled prince as newly released legal papers reveal court told Ghislaine find emails on Andrew and sex toy. Let me give you some details on this. It's an exclusive from the Mail on Sunday. Prince Andrew was tonight facing more humiliation after it was revealed that sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell was ordered to search her phone, computer and thousands of emails for his name, along with the words sex toy, erotic, Prince Andrew, Duke, York, royal, underage, massage, slave, sex, nipple and dildo. Let me just remind you, this is a senior member of the royal family and the late Queen's favourite son. Also exclusive, secrets of troubled Holly's TV comeback is the other story. She's expected to return to screens in Dancing on Ice. Now we go to Sunday Telegraph next. Sunak, I'll cut tax by curbing welfare. Blocked UAE-backed takeover of Telegraph block UAE-backed takeover of the Telegraph, dozens of MPs urged. Let me give you the detail on that story. The Daily Telegraph is up for sale. Some concerns from MPs that it could be sold to a group in the United Arab Emirates, concerns about impartiality and freedom of speech in this country, as well as great journalism. Councils in anti-democratic dash to beat net zero targets is the other story in the Telegraph. Independent next. Free childcare plan in chaos. Parents face losing out on nursery places at last minute as Hunt's key pre-election pledge unravels in a funding crisis. Sunday Express. £500 million. Boat gangs, huge profits out of misery. Criminal gangs behind small boat scandal have raked in nearly £500 million since the Channel crisis began. More than 100,000 people have made the treacherous crossing since 2018, paying an average of £4,000 per head for each journey. Sunday Mirror now. It's ice to have you back, Holly, as Holly Willoughby returns to ITV's Dancing on Ice. And royal exclusive, it's Prince Andrew again. I am going nowhere, says the Playboy Prince. Duke to resist attempt to kick him out of mansion. The Observer now. Key COVID inquiry report creates election date headache for the Prime Minister. And police refusals on Clare's law leave people at risk of abuse. Last but not least for now, Daily Star Sunday. E equals MC double top. Darts are turning us into Einsteins. Arrows definitely make you more cleverer, say the Daily Star Sunday. You can't beat a bit of bully if you want to be as brainy as Einstein, with biceps like Arnie. Boffins reckon that darts is a great way to improve your powers, both mental and physical. Say the Daily Star, there's hope for all of us. OK, let's get reaction to those headlines from tonight's top pundits. The Green Goddess, journalist, model and fitness expert Diana Moran, top political commentator Benedict Spence and television personality and broadcaster Precious Muir. Listen, let's get reaction to Prince Andrew before another stunning story about the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in the Sunday Telegraph. But I'll keep that on the bench for just a moment, because court told Ghislaine Maxwell find emails with words like Prince Andrew and sex toy. More humiliation for the palace and the country, Diana.
Can it get any worse?
No.
It's such a dreadful disgrace.
I mean, I don't know what some of these words mean. Dildo, nipple, slave.
I think we all do.
I lived a sheltered life, childhood, you know.
Well, he obviously hasn't.
No, it is a problem and it's not one that's going away. What can Charles do at this point, Diana?
I would have thought take the house away for a start. I know that you've said he's inherited all this money and the likes of, but gradually he's going to come to reality that he's got to now face his future, funding his future, not depending on his brother and all of us and our taxes.
I think he should be sent back to the US and probably face those allegations. I think that might be a good way forward for him, because he can't just hide out here in the UK, in my opinion. I think that's the only way for him to actually move past this.
Of course, there is another very dark possibility for the palace. This could badly backfire, Benedict. If they hound Prince Andrew out of the family, he could be Prince Harry Mark II. It could be Prince Harry, the sequel. He goes to America, he writes a book, he does a podcast. He could spill the beans.
I think, I mean, as far as I'm aware, he hasn't been charged with anything up to this point in the US either.
Correct.
So I think the key thing here, actually, for the royal family is to not comment on this, is to not take any major action, is to not rock the boat, and to focus on actually being the royal family.
I think they've already contributed, I think, was $2 million towards the $12 million that was given.
Yeah,
so I think they've already
of that
participated in that. So I think that's where
the Queen chipped in, didn't she?
The funding will end from that. I think $2 million
that's
to something that he hasn't done.
Again, though, I think the key thing now is to recognise that the royal family this is about the state. This is beyond simply celebrity tittle-tattle. And actually it needs to be focusing on what it is we expect it to do. And I understand that that might mean not throwing Andrew to the wolves exactly, but not actually engaging with this. If he needs to defend himself, he needs to do that on his own time and his own dollar.
How did the Queen's favourite son turn out to be such a wrong one, Diana?
Just don't know.
He made bad friends.
He obviously was a spoilt child. We're always told that it was the Queen's favourite son. So was it a question of spoiling, like Harry was spoilt as well?
Well, indeed. A close friend of mine is a royal insider who has said that no one's got a good word to say about the guy, that he's obnoxious, that he's arrogant, and a lot of the press reports today are saying he's pretty stupid too. I mean, the Newsnight interview was a colossal misjudgment on his part.
It was terrible,
I tend to
wasn't
think that we underplay how much stupidity has actually played a role in all of this.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly happy to believe that Prince Andrew, whatever he might or may not have got up to, made these decisions based on just sheer stupidity. I think that this is entirely possible. Just because he's a member of the royal family doesn't mean that he's particularly intelligent. I also think we need to bear in mind, I think as you were alluding to earlier, Precious, which is that actually in many very powerful circles across the world, this sort of behaviour is just sort of tolerated and accepted. And I think a very good example of that is the late former Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi.
Yes.
It was an open secret. Now, that was not so much to do with underage
Did you go to any of those bunga bunga parties?
I was never invited.
I've heard your Italian's not good enough.
Well, that's, I sound more like an Albanian than I do like an Italian.
Well, I mean,
and I was told this at Italian school when I was a very young child by all the other Italians.
But I think that there is a way, what you're saying is kind of like, I used to go to Playboy Mansion parties, and if they were looked back, I would be on the list, right? Doesn't mean everybody that went to the Playboy Mansion participated in every activity that now, years later, have come out. And
You might have just been having, I don't know, some, like the finger buffet, perhaps.
Right, I had fun by having a couple of drinks and, jumping on the dance floor, and off I went.
Where was this Playboy Mansion?
Playboy Mansion is in LA.
And you attended the famous...
I was working with the corporation for about 2-3 years.
With the Hugh Hefner Playboy Mansion.
I was with
you were
Hugh
a guest.
Hefner and all his wives.
And you went to the parties?
Yes.
And were you ever treated inappropriately?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, all the story have come out now recently, I am absolutely shocked because I didn't see any of this stuff. I never experienced this stuff. I actually genuinely had a great time at the Playboy Mansion. But my experience isn't the same as others. But would I be on the list as attending those parties?
Would.
I would be.
Did Hugh Hefner... Did Hugh Hefner...
So I would say the list of the Epstein list is guilty by association. If you don't get specifically why you were on the island, then you can't clear your name. And I know, I would say not everybody on that list is guilty. I don't think so. I don't believe so.
No,
but you have to clear your name because you are on that list.
But what were you going to say,
Well,
Dan?
I was just going to say, going back to what you mentioned just now, in years gone by, this is what aristocrats and royals and the likes of all around the world were able to get away with. They were being pleasured because they required being pleasured, and nobody was around to to say that that was wrong. Now we've got the newspapers, we've got the internet, we've got a lot more people thinking, a lot of people sadly challenging the monarchy as well.
Yes, with an agenda.
With an agenda. And this is why it's so dangerous now. Times have changed and they've got to come into line with the rest of us.
Benedict, of course, we can't call Prince Andrew a wrong 'un because he's been found guilty of no crime. I mean, this is a guy who's, you know, since his divorce, he's been a single man.
Yeah.
He's probably has been one of the most eligible bachelors in the world. Is it a crime that he had a private life?
No, it's not a crime that he had a private life. I think the problem is the mystery around so much of this. And, of course, people don't want it to be revealed. But what we do know is that the man at the centre of all of this, Mr Epstein, is a convicted sex trafficker and sex offender.
Yeah,
that's where all of this comes from. The one man who has been charged was found guilty, and the woman who was charged as an accomplice was also found guilty.
Exactly.
So all of this could have been about entrapment. That happens very frequently.
Yeah.
And, you know, if Prince Andrew is as stupid as many people suggest he is, that would make a very good explanation. It would certainly explain why he went back to talk to Mr Epstein after he'd been convicted. I think you're right, again, Precious, to say that some of these people will not have been guilty of any wrongdoing.
Right.
Some of them may. But ultimately, it is the sort of the
We need the
cloud
specific.
around all of this.
I think the list,
Yes.
the list is not as strong on its own without the evidence next to it. I think that we need to know why those people were there, what they did there, victim statements and footage, maybe photographs, video. That's what we need.
Well, it's extraordinary that this woman, Ghislaine Maxwell, who, of course, is the daughter of the late owner of the Mirror newspaper, Robert Maxwell, who died under mysterious circumstances and died in disgrace himself. But she was procuring sex for individuals close to Jeffrey Epstein, potentially powerful politicians and all celebrities. She's in prison for 20 years. No one else is. Why not?
This is what I'm saying. So this is why the documents are being released. I guess that by the end of January, we're going to know more information.
Will justice ever prevail? I mean, this stinks, doesn't it, Diana?
We'd like to think that justice will prevail. Therefore, I think it's got to be followed up. We've got to know the details.
We do need to know the details.
Who those people are.
The victims
what
are
they
most
were
important
doing.
in this case because they're the ones with the answers.
Absolutely.
They know exactly who was there, when they were there, and
So
what
does
they did there.
So does Andrew know.
Most likely he does. Let's have a look at this quickly before we get to some more papers after the break. Sunday Express, Benedict, £500 million. That is the profit from the boat gangs in the last few years. 100,000 people, it's 114,000 people have made those crossings since 2018. This is an industry, this is very profitable, and it's got to stop.
It is, but it's not simply... You can't look at it in a vacuum and say that it's simply people operating boats across the channel, because the gangs in question are international, and they're predominantly they're Albanian or they're Kurdish, and if you look at the routes at which people take, they also are used to smuggle narcotics, other illicit goods, and weapons and other things as well. It's a much bigger operation than simply saying 500 million, which is a huge sum. But this is a multi-billion pound
Do you buy Labour's idea of smashing the criminal gangs? Because I think that's for the birds. I think that's up there with world peace and the simultaneous orgasm.
I think you can do a great deal of work to stop this trade by arresting people and putting them in prison. But the problem is it will take an international coordinated effort because they are international gangs. They will be operating in other countries across Europe and the Middle East as well. So whilst it's all very well that the Labour Party says, well, we're going to smash the gangs, that involves multiple countries putting people in prison at the same time.
And it ain't going to happen.
And it's not going to happen. There simply isn't the level of cooperation there required, I don't think.
The sadness of all of this is that there are innocent people, innocent lives.
Most definitely. Well, listen, folks, lots more to come. Next up, we've got The Sun on Sunday and The Sunday Times, and an extraordinary diatribe from the Prime Minister about GB News star Nigel Farage. That's right, Rishi Sunak has had some choice words for Nigel Farage, and I shall reveal all next.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I. So you want higher taxes? Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show. This is Mark Dolan tonight on GB News. Reacting to the big stories of the day, my top pundits tonight, Diana Moran, the Green Goddess herself, Benedict Spence and Precious Muir. Let's get to more of the front pages. And we have the Sunday Times. More on this post office scandal. Post office fury intensifies. Gaza files reveal Hamas paranoia before October the 7th. And 1 in 4 parents now think it's fine for children to skip school. Absolute scandal. OK, folks, well, listen, let me bring you quite a stunning story from inside tomorrow's Sunday Telegraph, and it's in relation to the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Nigel Farage. Rishi Sunak, his first political interview of the year, it's with the Sunday Telegraph, and he said every vote for Farage is a vote for Starmer. The next election may be, according to Rishi Sunak, 11 months away. However, he may as well be in the middle of the campaign already. His defence of the Rwanda legislation intended to unblock deportation flights for illegal migrants is followed by a warning. A vote for anyone other than Conservatives is a vote to put Keir Starmer in power. Senior Tories, say the paper, are worried that should Mr Farage return to lead Reform UK, formerly the Brexit Party, populist candidates could draw disaffected Conservative voters away from Tory candidates, offering many would-be Labour MPs a clear run. Benedict Spence, the Prime Minister, is worried about the threat of Nigel Farage.
Of course he is. I mean, as things currently stand, the Labour Party will probably win the next general election with or without the impact of Nigel Farage or reform. But what this is about, and the Prime Minister saying that every vote for Nigel Farage, for reform, for whoever, would be a vote for the Labour Party, to which those people on that part of that party would say, well, yes, absolutely it is, because this isn't about keeping Labour out. This is about the destruction, fundamentally, of a Conservative Party that many people look at and say has utterly failed on almost every sort of key issue that most Conservative voters want. A lot of people feel very disaffected. They say, well, what's the difference in having Labour or the Conservatives at the moment, given all the things that haven't gone to plan? What I think a lot of people on the right, and this is the very reason why the Reform Party exists, is to change how politics happens on the right. It can't happen whilst the Conservative Party survives and keeps limping on in its current iteration. So I don't really see that that's any sort of great threat to say, oh, well, if you're voting for Farage or voting for reform or voting for whoever, you're going to let in the Labour Party. Everybody knows the Labour Party is going to be in government next time. This is more about how big a kicking can we give to the Conservative Party and potentially try to then start again on the right. So I don't think that's going to put many people off.
Could Reform UK enjoy your support next year?
I don't know yet. I've got to be honest, I'm just so desperately disillusioned with the Conservative Party and have been for a very long time. But that doesn't mean that I'm in any sort of position to make a statement.
Well, briefly, before I come to Diana Moran, as somebody that I guess leans to the right, is the destruction of the Tory party at the next election a price worth paying for a proper party of the right to emerge in 5 to 10 years' time?
Again, though, I think the Conservative
because that's what many those on the right, including Nigel Farage, think. I mean, Farage wants the Tories to be eviscerated.
The fear that I have, the concern that I have, is that the Tories will do their own version of what Labour did under Jeremy Corbyn, which is we're going to go in a very specific right-wing direction, and just as long as we're ideologically pure, the public will just fall into line behind us, and that won't work. I think it's not so much just about becoming more right-wing, it is about having a more pragmatic, actionable approach to politics. The key thing about the Conservatives over the last 10, 13 years is inaction. And actually, that is the key thing. Be it energy policy, be it infrastructure, it is a complete stultification of the state. That is, I think, what is the key thing. And I don't think that the Labour will be any better. So I think 5 years of the Labour Party, that's probably a price worth paying.
OK, Precious, briefly, if you can, do you think Nigel Farage could keep Rishi Sunak out of number 10? Is he got that much sway?
I think that Rishi Sunak has kept himself out of number 10. I think he's lost the faith of the people. I mean, even if you are a Conservative and you have voted Conservative your entire life, this man could sway you because he has failed to deliver the things that he promised the country. Rishi Sunak hasn't done a great job in his position, and it just keeps getting worse.
What's your view on this, Diana?
I could be quite tempted, I'm going to have to think a little bit more about it, to follow Nigel Farage, a man who says what he thinks and works on it. And we've had so much disappointment with the Conservatives. I'm not sure at all about the Labour Party. I'm going to have a lot of thinking about it, but he could be there for me to give him my vote.
Well, of course, the key issue is whether he becomes leader of that party. Of course, there's a very capable guy in the hot seat as we speak, and it's Richard Tice. But that story is going to run and run. It's time now for my pundits to nominate their headline heroes and back page zeros of the day. Let's crack through these if we can. Diana Moran, your headline hero of the day.
Without any shadow of a doubt, Kate Gallagher.
And tell us why.
Well, because...
Kate Garraway.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I beg your pardon.
No, of course.
Kate Garraway.
Poor Derek Draper's wife.
I'm so sorry.
And widow.
She's shown love. The children.
Yes.
That poor man.
Yeah.
But he's had so much love right up to the end. She has my 100% vote.
Brilliant nomination. May he rest in peace, and all our warmest thoughts to Kate and her family. Briefly, if you can, your headline hero, Benedict.
It's Luke Littler. It's the Messi of the darts world. It's an absolutely phenomenal ride that he gave us all. I'm also going to give a little shout-out, though, to Luke Humphries, who did actually become the champion.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that's being lost. But it was a really, really great feel-good story. It's got so many people interested in the darts.
And he'll be back.
He will.
Of course he will. Precious, briefly, if you can, your headline hero.
I absolutely think that Ricky Gervais has done a great job on his latest Netflix special. It's absolutely hilarious. And I feel like he is the only person that says the things that he actually, most of us think, but will dare to say. And he's still with the comedic, intent. He's not malicious.
Of course he's not.
And if you don't like him, switch off.
Too right. OK, just your back page zeros, a name and a sentence, if I could.
Back page hero, post office. Horizon IT in particular, for the corruption and destroying people's lives.
It's time for justice. Briefly.
Stephen Hawking. No necessary allegation that he's done anything wrong, but sadly the greatest physicist of his generation will now forever be tarnished by association, which is what we were saying earlier. We need clarity about the Epstein list.
We do.
Because so many people who you think of as being perfectly reasonable,
That's right.
people are now being tarnished.
Where did he put that mouse of his?
Exactly.
Briefly, your back page zero.
Donald Trump. I mean, he's a bad influence on the country, and I just don't think he should ever be president again.
Can I thank my brilliant pundits tonight? Really enjoyed your company. Plenty of truth bombs and a couple of laughs along the way. We'll do it all again tomorrow for Mark Dolan tonight from 9 till 11 with Anne Widdecombe, Annunziata Rees-Mogg and much more. Thanks to the team. Headliners is next.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather. Looking at the next 24 hours or so, it's going to remain cold, frost and ice tonight, some fog patches again as well, and then fairly dry and bright through Sunday itself, and that's because high pressure is going to dominate. Into next week it starts to draw in colder air from the east, and we'll all notice that. But for this evening and overnight, it's generally still a west-east split across the country. Clear skies across Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Wales and the southwest. Some frost, fog and ice forming here. Icy stretches elsewhere as well. Temperatures hovering close to freezing, falling well below freezing in the glens of Scotland down to around -7 or 8, possibly a little lower in one or two spots. But it means a sunny start here. Any fog patches will be slow to clear across the northwest of the UK, but they will eventually lift and break to allow sunny spells, and elsewhere generally dry with sunny spells. Scattered showers though on a brisk northeasterly breeze across southeast England, and some feeding in off the North Sea for northern England too. And temperatures on the cold side, generally 3 to 5 Celsius. Add on the strength of that wind, it will feel colder than the numbers suggest, near freezing. And another icy start Monday morning. Plenty of dry weather, a brisk easterly wind developing across England and Wales in particular. It could blow in a few wintry showers, but most places dry and bright. And it stays largely dry through Tuesday and into Wednesday as well, and staying on the cold side.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News. The